like and drop my. We would request everybody to please keep the audio on mute. Only the speakers and the moderator are requested to please keep their audio unmuted. Keeping the video on mute will, keeping the video off will also help in bandwidth. When we have the interactive session, you may please post your questions in the chat, and we will pass on to the session chairperson to take it forward with the speakers. However, you are requested to please share the question when the interactive session is on. With this, I will request Mr. Amrita Gupta, the former president of the Bengal Chamber, who is chairing this session, to please take it forward.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I really appreciate Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industries for holding this webinar on a very important and relevant topic today. I'm also glad that they have invited me to moderate this session. Whereas at the same time, I also feel a little sad that intellectual interlocution is happening between us without we being able to see each other. I mean, I'm myself getting used to these sad times in this form of professional exchange of ideas and thoughts when we can't see each other. But I hope that the time will pass soon and we will be able to hold the seminars and such intellectual professional discussions more in an environment when we all will be very together. It's indeed a very sad time, a perilous time, and the discussions that we're having all over, informally in the drawing room or formally in such webinars, are all around the shapes of curves, essentially two, which are not at all going in a direction in which we want that to. The shape of the GDP and the economy curve, and the shape of the curve showing the spread of the coronavirus. Now, we have had such situations. There were HIV 1980s, the SARS 2003, H1N1 2009, MARS 2011, Ebola 2014-16. We had such situations, of course, man-made disasters, bad handling of the physical and of the sanitary standards, abuse of the natural norms. Too much of interconnectedness globally has given rise to such pandemic and such morbid symptoms, and more may come also in the future. But the fact is that since 1930, after the 1929-30 depression, this one is surely the worst as far as the economic depression goes. The contraction of the global GDP by 3%, the contraction of the GDPs of the developing countries by a varying percentage of 1 to 5, -1 to -5. India possibly still will be having, according to the forecast, of around 1.9, China having a little positive around 2 or 2 point something. The fiscal deficit of the whole world greater than 10%, as it is now estimated to be, of the GDP. The consumer buying sentiments hugely low, unemployment at its peak. So it's definitely a very, very depressing economic situation at this point in time. There's a lack of demand in the market, which is creating definitely a vacuum. And the fiscal stimulus from the central bank of the world, of the various countries, of India, they're trying to project some fiscal stimulus through some moratorium, through some interest, through some adjustments of the rates and ratios. But I am not so sure whether this fiscal stimulus will really be able to fill this crisis up or fill this vacuum up in a very permanent manner till the business sentiments or the buying or the consumption really goes up. Now, what are the impediments to this consumption? I mean, even if there is some amount of liquidity coming in the market, but the impediments to the consumption will still be that there will still continue to be a mental lockdown. I mean, even if the physical lockdown is being lifted up, I'm not so sure whether people will still be really gathering, assembling, thronging in the various malls and going for non-essential buyings, going back to the buying spree as under the normal circumstances they would be having. They may still be very much afraid of the infection, of the health standards. And the other impediment could be that because of the economic downtime, because of the fearful economic situation, they may all basically tend to save more than buy. And therefore, the savings expenditure could be more than the consumption expenditure, which possibly will not be very helpful for the economy at this point, because that will badly need the consumption expenditure to go up. What we have seen also during the 2008, 2007, that economic depression and the distressing times, that the imbalance and the risks are too much pervading a global economy. And also we have seen that the bad policy measures also exacerbates the situation. And I only hope and pray that a similar thing doesn't recur this time again. Because while we're seeing a lot of fiscal stimulus is being injected by the bankers, but there is a massive amount of loss of income also in the world now, in every country. I mean, loss of jobs, loss of income. Therefore, the private sector debts also will go up, unsustainable manner. It's now becoming unsustainable, heading possibly to a large amount of defaults and the bankruptcies. And the public expenditure also possibly will now go a lot to the health, and the public debts also will be going up. And if there is no buyer, if there is no consumer sentiments, if there is only debts coming into the market, and if we do not have a mechanism by which these debts will actually be repaid, or these debts are going in the direction in which more consumption will actually be created, then there could be definitely a situation of debt deflation and insolvency. I mean, unless the labor market really reorganizes itself back into the shape, unless the consumer sentiments really reorganizes itself back into the old buying spree, unless we see a situation of a very high consumption and the commodity prices also stabling down, we are very concerned about the commodity prices, the destabilization of the commodity prices, because it is always not good for everybody that if the commodity prices go down, because if the GCC countries are suffering in their economy because of the commodity prices significantly going down as it is now, I mean, it has improved a little bit over the last few days, but overall very low. I mean, it may not be very good for the world also, because the huge amount of the world's business also depends on the GCC country. And there are many countries which are dependent on the GCC, and that may actually percolate down to those countries and percolate down within that country to the citizen level also. There could be also an accelerated deglobalization, a more xenophobic kind of a sentiments now coming in, more protectionism, and certain geostrategic standoff between US, China, and various other leading countries. And that can also lead to a very peculiar changing of the levers of the today's economy. Like one may actually move it back to the jobs which were actually there in the developing countries, production which were happening in the developing countries can go back into those reshoring into those countries, and therefore can lead to more automation and therefore lead to more unemployment. And therefore, any kind of fiscal stimulus which is now getting in, if not appropriately handled with proper policy measures, can really lead to a huge amount of permanent supply chain negative, permanent cash negative situation in the whole world, and that will really be very, very disastrous. Just at the end, while introducing the topic for today, I mean, I remember the World Economic Forum in month of January in the Davos, in the January 2020, in the last concluded World Economic Forum, they had a lot of deliberation on the stakeholder capitalism. They changed the term from a shareholder capitalism to the stakeholder capitalism, meaning that a business will now just be managing the shareholders' happiness, but the business will actually have to manage all stakeholders interacting with the business. Now, who are these stakeholders? The stakeholders are anybody playing in my ecosystem, my suppliers, extended supply chain, extended distribution chain, my banker, any components of the social or the climate that is working, interacting with the business, the citizens, the employees, everything are with the stakeholder. And therefore, they felt that to have a sustainable footprint of a business where they would really be able to combat all the kind of perilous situation, the business will have to work in such a way that all the stakeholders are happy and contributing adequately to a business, and business will also be happy in that case. So therefore, there will be happiness all around in terms of effectively and professionally managing the entire stakeholder capitalism and the stakeholders. Now, we never knew at that time that the situation will come soon, within 3 to 4 months, that how important the business enablers at that time will be, not just the business, but the stakeholders. And today we are coming to a situation when we're really seeing how the enablers are becoming very important. The three phases, which are all seeing the journey, the survival and the sustainable, then making it steady, and then after that thriving. I mean, if we take the first phase of the survival and sustaining, we're seeing yesterday, we also did one webinar on the working capital management. The moot point is that I do not have liquidity and I do not have cash. And therefore, to generate cash in the supply chain, it's not just the responsibility of the banker who is giving me liquidity, but also the large firms also are trying to bring in a lot of supply chain financing the supplier, financing the consumer so that they can buy my products well, financing the supplier so that they can sell my products also at time. So therefore, the concepts of the supply chain financing is not just with the banker, but with also along with the big corporates also. We're also finding a big role that the logistics players will actually be playing. Now, whether the deglobalization will have an impact on the logistics beyond the country's border, we will see. But whether the logistics will be more now predominant, which is like the inland logistics, or it will be also having a prevalence on the logistics, which is actually, or for the logistics which is going from the country. But there could be a lot of factors which will go into the negotiation with the logistics people also, in terms of a business, how they can really generate better terms from the logistics provider, and what impact will it have from the logistical service provider. What impact will they bring in onto the business? How they will actually be helping the business to survive well on the logistics side. We also thought of the legal, because the force majeure clause, the doctrines of the frustrations, all those kinds of clauses will help me to do a better negotiation with my suppliers or with whom I have the contracts, and therefore can flush more money into my supply chain. But whether that will really make my other stakeholders unhappy, that also is something that we really need to see. And of course, we have a big companies, that how they will be able to manage this whole thing. I mean, how, because they are managing their suppliers and their distributors well, they are managing the MSMEs around the ecosystem also well, will play a very, very big role in the in the today's economy and making the businesses survive. Now, with this, I am introducing the topic today, establishing the agenda, which is the business enablers. And today we have 4 good speakers from industry, 4 more than good speakers. They're very experienced people from their respective areas. Our first gentleman, the speaker, is Mr. Vinit Kumar, who is the chairman of the Kolkata Port Trust, the IRSEE, and he has a very strong knowledge on the logistics, both the logistics within the country and the logistics outside the country. And I will request Mr. Vinit Kumar to come in with his view from his industry.
Yeah, thanks, Ambarish, and BCCI for giving me this opportunity today. I can see Captain Majumdar. I associate BCCI with Captain Majumdar. He is our shipping committee head, and all my interactions with BCCI have been facilitated by him. Other distinguished participants in this webinar. Already a lot of ground has already been covered by Ambarish. He has given you the broad picture as to how things are and where they are heading for. I'll briefly, touch upon as to what we are doing in the logistics side and what are our plans for the coming time. I was just going through a few things. This one, tragedy, we can say, is has a special feature that it is not only an economic tragedy like the global meltdown of 2008, but it involves a lot of suffering to the mankind. In other cases, the other tragedies, financial tragedies we see, they are more on the financial sides, but the human health and all these things were never affected. Maybe the last was 1920, that Spanish flu. So, but after that, all these financial crises or economic crises, the the human health, the people, they were not worried about their health. They were ready to fight ready to put in long hours, organize labor, do whatever they wanted in whatever manner. Now, in this particular case, a lot of limitations and restrictions which have come in. So it becomes a greater challenge for all of us to work in a very restricted environment and still, try to recover whatever we have lost. I was just going through yesterday some study about India, wherein it is estimated that the GDP growth in this year will be 0 to 1.8%. Worst case scenario is 0. Best case scenario is 1.8%. That is with the assumptions that the entire COVID crisis is over in the first quarter. That is by June. We have a good monsoon, and there is effective policy intervention by the government. Also, infusion of funds by the government. These are some. These are 3-4 slides, which are from another presentation. I think it's a McKinsey presentation. I came through. This shows various scenarios as to one coordinate is the effective public health response, the other side is the economic response. In India, if we we find ourselves maybe in the first two, that rapid, and either we are in the rapid and effective control, or there is another case where effective control is there, but the virus reoccurs, the virus comes back. And on the bottom is, I think you're not able to see, I am not at least able to see, but it is basically the government's response. Very poor response, then moderate response, and an excellent response by the government. So these are the 4 scenarios, the shaded scenarios. If you see, these are the 4 shaded scenarios, A1, A2, A3, A4, which are more likely for all of us. The first one, A1, is that the virus recurs and the recovery is slow. The best case is A4, where virus does not reoccur. We are, by June, we are okay. And there's a strong recovery. Other 2 scenarios are that virus is contained, but the recovery is slow. And other is that virus recurs and the recovery is very strong. Next slide, please. Yeah. So in these 4 scenarios, if you see, the worst case scenario is the first one, A1, where there is a recurrence of virus and there is a muted recovery. If we have, done the plotting on the bottom of it, we have done plotting of our projections, our traffic projections. What we can see that suppose in the February we are operating at one level. So if this kind of situations happens, that the virus recurs and the recovery is low, we can be able to come back to next year. So that is the worst case scenario. The best case scenario is that the last, if you see the A4, and there's a strong rebound in the growth. So if I consider February this year as 1, then somewhere between September to October of this year, we can come back to the levels we were operating before this COVID problem started. And the kind of loss we have estimated for us is, in the worst case scenario, we lose around 20% of our output, and in the best case scenario, we lose around 7% of our output. So in any case, unless something very, very drastic is done, or something new comes in, we stand to lose around somewhere from 7% to 20% of the, in our terms we can call it traffic, but for everybody it's a generic kind of model. We have used it for our purpose. So the effect can be something from 7% to 20-25%. This is roughly the estimations of various studies. Coming to shipping sector, this was a general. Thank you so much. Thank you for the slides. I don't need them anymore. If you since I am coming from port, the shipping sector, I would say that 95% of the international trade, or even more, still happens on the shipping. The air cargo is maybe 5% or even less than that. And in the global trade, EXIM trade, shipping has a very great role to play. But as on date, I can tell you there's a drop of around 25% in the shipping sector. Around 40%, 46% there are blank calls. Blank calls, it means that if a shipping line used to call me 4 times in a month, they are calling me roughly 2.5 times. So the blank calls, the number of lesser calls, the calls are lesser by 50%, roughly 50%. As of now, there is a lockdown. All the ports we are providing, free storage and everything. So there is a lot of cargo lying in the ports, because also there was issues because there are lockdown everywhere. The trucks were not available. However, the situation has improved. Now there is little progress, but there is still a lot of material stuck in the ports because the factories are not open. Labor is not there, so importers are not picking up their stuff. But slowly it has started. Coming to specifically to the Calcutta port, I will say that under Calcutta port management, there are 2 ports, that is Calcutta and Haldia. I'm very proud to say that not even for a single day, the operations of Calcutta or Haldia have been closed till now. For that matter, any major port in the country. Major port, when I say there are 12 government major ports, none of them has completely shut down, not even for a single day. Today at Calcutta and Haldia, we are operating at around 80% of our normal capacity. April numbers are just out. We are around 25% less than last year. Cargo wise, we are 25% less than last year. As of now, we are operating at around 80%. There are challenges in the sense that we have a big challenge in Haldia. There was a COVID patient. One of our contractors person was found COVID. There was a lot of people. Of course, they get worried. So a lot of staff was worried. There was some work was affected. Then we came up. Just I'm trying to tell you as to. I think there was a topic as to how to survive this time. So we had very hard time, but we somehow are able to survive because one thing which I have followed is to be honest with my employees, with my stakeholders and everybody. We have been constant touch with all our stakeholders. We have been telling them whatever is the situation. If there is a COVID patient, yes, there is a COVID patient. Initially, people thought that if there is a COVID patient in the port, Haldia being is in a little off urban, or I can say, I don't know if it's right to call it a rural area, but people there, they thought port ke andar corona aa gaya hai. We will not go into the port. What we had to do, I have got my own fire tenders. I took my fire tenders out. I filled my fire tenders with that hypochlorite solution, and I sort of washed the entire port. And I did videos. I displayed it in the entire local channels, cable TV, everything. And I told people, look, there is nothing there. We have done everything. You please come back. And I must say that people respond. They have come back. We have done very strict protocols in the port. As of now, whosoever enters is being scanned thermally. That thermal scanning, 100% thermal scanning is there. Nobody can enter the port without thermal scanning. Masks we have made mandatory in the port, not only for us, like our staff, but anybody who is coming, any stakeholders. We have kept enough supplies, and we are providing from our side. If somebody is coming to the port, visiting, or he is entering, is not having a mask, we are giving him a mask. We are giving him sanitizer. We are providing everything there. We have made videos in vernacular and in Hindi, English, to inform our people as to what are the precautions have to be made. They should take what all. So all that is being done. We are regularly in touch with our stakeholders. The Ministry of Shipping has given discounts. Like till now for containers, we are not charging any ground rent till 3rd of this month. There are few more things which have come, which have been done. But somehow we have been able to manage. Calcutta, we had a couple of cases of COVID positive. We have set up our own quarantine facility where we have around 18 to 20 beds. We have our own hospital. In the hospital, we have got isolation ward. I have 6 ventilators. I have around 36 oxygen cylinders. So my patients, I am primarily treating them there. Once they are tested, if they are found positive, then I am sending them to whichever are the nominated hospital. But till then, I am taking care of all my people. We have our learnings. I will tell you a very interesting case. One of our staff, he had very mild fever. He reported to the hospital. He was tested and he was tested negative. We put him in the normal ward, and after 6-7 days, he still continues to have fever. And after 6-7 days, we again test him. And now, after around 15-20 days, he tests positive. Now I have to quarantine all my doctors. I have to quarantine at least 5 doctors, 5 nursing staff, and 15-20 people we have to quarantine. Anyway, these are the learnings. We are also, every day is a challenge. Every day something is coming, something else is happening. But we have been able to sail through till now. Calcutta port was the second port in the country to issue emergency passes to all its stakeholders. We had very good liaison with the customs and with the state government authorities. There are nominated officers. They give us their details on the letterhead, and we give it to the police, and they allow it. So all this we have done, and we have been able to survive. Very recently, the ministry has announced an ex gratia of 50 lakh rupees. So if due to an eventuality anybody loses his life, he's not only our employee, but he is a contractual employee with us, or he is our contractors person. So even those contractors which we are deploying and they are working for us in the port, if anybody faces an issue and loses life, we will pay 50 lakh rupees to him. This is something to reassure people that yes, please come for work, because in my view, maybe lockdown period may be another 15 days or 20 days or whatever, but things will not be normal very soon. Things have to be, we have to be ready for a different kind of, working in at least for next 4 to 5 months to believe. Even if the cases go away, we have to have very, strict protocols in our offices. As of now, we have guidelines to working only officers and 30% of staff. The similar guidelines exist for private people also. Lot of things have to be done. Post COVID, if you ask me, I have the biggest challenge which I feel today is to keep our workforce in a good fettle. This will pass, but the most important thing is if I am able to save my people from this, because the moment it is over, then and you want to go whole hog into your operations or whatever you are doing, you should have your people with you. So if in this process, in this months or 2 months, I am able to save my people from this and I do not have any tragedy, then maybe after 3 months I am in a position to go whole hog into this. Of course, it depends upon how the economy behave, how this behave. But of course, if everybody works in that manner and we are able to save maximum number of people, and so of course this can happen. New protocols have to be set. As of I don't think 2 months ago anybody used to do these kind of video conferences, but now this is order of the day. Every other day we are attending. We are also communicating to our staff and our stakeholders on this. So this kind of methods, protocols have to be set. We in our organization have made an entire handbook of procedures down to the level that each office, who will sanitize, how many times will be sanitized, by what solution will be sanitized, and what protocols are to be followed, who are the responsible officers. So we have listed everything, and we are just waiting maybe from third or little after that we will start operating. Similar things I think is required to be done at maybe we all need to look into that and do that. Few things which have come out of this. One is the use of IT. During this process, we have simplified a lot of processes. Customs have simplified a lot of processes. which probably it was taking a hell lot of a time and resistance. But good thing is that during this period, because of the necessity, we have been able to push through all those things. So the thinking in the government is we will continue with that. So if you see the custom procedure, in fact, there is a it's very shortly it is likely to come that even the IGM will be will be able to have it online through an web-enabled process with that blockchain technology. The IGM will be generated once at the shipper's end, and it will travel all along virtually. So that protocol is being set at the highest level, and probably it should get very soon approved by the ministry, and it will come in force. So all those things, that is one advantage I see. One more thing which probably all of us should look into is that when we go back to work again, we have to rethink what should be our focus between GDP and something like Bhutan has this gross happiness index. We should all be aware that every day you get a message, now Ganga is cleaner, now air is cleaner, ozone layer is healing. So it is, as mankind, it is important for all of us to really think as to, when we go back, that whether we should follow the same practices or whether, there is a need to change, not only at an individual level, but also at a level as to how we do business, how we carry out things. One very simple thing is now we can talk like that, and what is the need to travel all the way? And, people used to survive and live without these things also. So somewhere, the sustainability thing, we should give a real thought now, as that when we go back to post-COVID area, these rather than simply going back to what we were doing pre-COVID, we should try to evolve something post-COVID which is more nature friendly, more sustainable. And also in the business, there is a need to handhold with each other. Logistics is a big chain, starting from shipper to shipping line to custom handling agent to CFS to port and everybody. The moment the crisis goes, we are back to normal, in the sense, of course, competition is a good thing. I'm not saying there should not be competition, but there should be we should be sensitive towards supporting each other in that manner, that just post this to recover our losses or to go whole hog into that competitive mode. We should not kill somebody or a stakeholder. So there is a need for a collaborative effort when we want to come back. There is a need for a collaborative effort on the part of the entire chain to come back together. That is another aspect. One more interesting or positive thing which at a Government of India level also we are thinking, and individually at port level also we are thinking, is that the companies moving out of the neighboring country China and probably looking for opportunities in India. It is a fact. Government at the highest level is is approaching the embassies. So there are a lot of discussions going on. We are also coming up with a plan as to how port-led development can be linked to this. We have a lot of land in Haldia, which is bigger land parcels, where we can think of getting some port-based industries. In Calcutta, we have a lot of warehousing. So we are also making an action plan, that the ministry also is taking an action plan, because this is about the Eastern chapter of BCCI, and you have a very important role to play. I would request BCCI and all its stakeholders to take an active part in this, and come out with a strategy as to how we can make Eastern India and this part more attractive to the things which are coming in the near future. Get ready for that. In the end, I will thank BCCI once again for giving me this opportunity. I wish all of you to stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Vinit Kumar. We will come back to you with few questions, which is crossing my mind, but that may be in the mind of the audience also. Firstly, my compliments and gratitude to the way the port has kept the operations running. I mean, despite the various odds that you have faced, and you have not even allowed a single day by which the port has halted that work. I mean, that really deserves a huge compliments for you and all your colleagues around the country. Now, coming back to the whether there will be newer destinations for the Indian goods now to go, I mean, to the Southeast Asia, how India can really become a major export hub and therefore can fulfill the vacuum which may get created because of which I mentioned as some geostrategic standoff between the various countries, and how the port is basically getting themselves prepared for such newer destinations. That's one question which is in my mind, and also we come back to later that the small businesses, what can they expect in terms of the logistics costs, the shipping, the shipper costs, and all that? Will there be anything that will be extended to them, whether it is a direct cost or some indirect facilities or benefits which they can get to ease their burden? But these are some of the thoughts which are going in my mind. But I'll now move to Mr. R. Bhaskar Babu, the MD and CEO of the Suryodaya Small Finance Bank. And of course, we know how important the bank is right now after the RBI has announced all their measures, that how the bank is very critical for the MSME and for the business liquidity. So we move to Mr. Bhaskar Babu for his observations on how bank is now playing a role.
Thank you, Mr. Dasgupta. Thank you, BCCA, for the opportunity. I would keep my inputs pretty crisp. Mr. Dasgupta covered a lot in terms of almost summarizing the happenings and the impact and how we kind of had to produce. As you know, in a country like ours, around 50% or more than that are the low-income households. In a crisis like this, which is absolutely unprecedented, I think the word which probably has been used
This conference will now be recorded.
Is the word unprecedented. So many a times when there is a crisis, even a small crisis, we are out there in the field figuring out what to do. So here this time we have been kind of told that you'll have to battle the crisis which you have never seen, or probably your grandfathers also have never seen, but you'll have to do it in a standstill mode. It required quite a bit of a challenge, an experience, and you'll have to assume some of the hypotheses which you never ever thought that could happen. Not, as I say, sometimes nothing happens in decades, and in a few months, many decades happen. I think we are exactly in that situation now. And when the whole thing happened, a few things which I think is an experience for not just us, for all businesses, would be that, as mentioned by I think Mr. Dasgupta as well in the beginning, is that stakeholder management become extremely key. The last row that you think is profits, the primary thing you think about it is you'll have to survive. You'll have to survive meaningfully, and the people who get impacted immediately are the most critical stakeholders, which you realize at this point of time is your employees, and the lower state of the income households, employees become far more important. So we have, as an entity, suddenly we realized that it was far more possible for us to have a deeper connect with them virtually than we ever thought that would happen, even meeting in person. And these were hypotheses broken, myths busted, or out of necessity, we all picked it up much faster than ever we were required to. So that became a critical piece in terms of the crisis management. And very important for all companies would be liquidity. So we went ahead and loaded up liquidity than more that was required. So we borrow at 8% and have now put in the reverse report 3.75%. And to what extent do you really do it? Because liquidity, you'll have to survive, and to survive, when your customers have to survive, for all of that, the most important is liquidity. Even if there is a huge cost about it, we'll have to consider it as an insurance and then go over doing it. Then we reached out to the customers. One of the key assumptions that we all have assumed in our customer household, which is a low income household, is that you can never have stickiness or contactability with the customers if you don't meet them in person. And surprising as it looks now, hopefully I think the whole thing continues. It is not just the wisdom which is temporary. Is that the connect has been much more stronger than we would have had or we would have thought about it. We thought that we will connect only with 30% of our customer. We have reached around closer to 10 lakh of our 15 lakh customers, which is approximately 66%. Very simple learning, but kind of substantially valuable, is that we did not call them up for checking out when they are going to make our repayments for business. All we did was to check them out in terms of how well they're doing. And just in case there was an SOS, could be a customer in Surat has somebody, a son, for instance, in Delhi, and they wanted an SOS, a small help. So since you have a wider distribution, you are there in every part of the city states you operate in 600 locations we are there available. Those small things in terms of reaching out gave a tremendous sense of, one, of course, customer service, but more importantly, to our own employees, to ourselves, that we are out there to handhold each other. I think the previous speaker, the chairperson of the Calcutta Port, has also mentioned that. I think you demonstrate that you are holding for each other, that becomes a very, very important thing. And when we did all that, we kind of looked back, and another key learning, hopefully we'll take it back after the COVID crisis is over, is that how we behave in good times is what protects you when you face a crisis. So just about two months before, everything looked rosy. The growth rate we are discussing about in the small finance bank industry was anywhere between the lowest for the conservative player was talking about 20%. The average one was talking about 40%. 20, 40, 50, whatever numbers you gave became whether it is a 1, 2 or 0 or whether you're going to survive through. The ones which are standing, the last man standing at this point of time are standing good, are the ones who are prepared for that kind of rainy day, even if you're not sure that's going to happen when things were absolutely good. So we have to take the learning out there when things will turn to normalcy for sure, whether it will be V-shaped recovery or it will be W-shaped or will be L for some time. Irrespective of it, we are all going to be back in business in a reasonable manner. While there is doomsday, there are lots of negative projections in terms of that things will collapse and so on, which there will be obviously damages, there will be collateral damages. But most likely, if history were to repeat itself, suddenly all this will pass. Things will kind of get managed while we'll all come back. But hopefully, the only thing which I don't want to kind of repeat, or probably many of us should not do, is that our own past behavior of thinking that everything is when going is good, we presume and then we kind of put a chart which is just a linear one, saying that it's going to be good, I'm going to continue. If you don't repeat that mistake, as the previous speaker said again, probably the measurement parameters itself has to change. Are we going to measure our success only in terms of A, B, and C, which we measured, not to really pass judgment in terms of whether they were right or wrong? Employee satisfaction becomes different. Will that employee satisfaction be measured only by in terms of the salaries we pay and so on and so forth, the work-life balance? Today we realize that working from home is becoming a stress factor. Earlier we said that we wanted to have a work-life balance. Now we're all looking forward to jump in. So you need to have a balance in all of that. What we do in good times is what kind of helps us in terms of managing bad times. Stakeholders becomes key. It is not just shareholders. It is not just a return on equity. It is a sustainable returns that you kind of generate across various measurement parameters, which becomes important. And coming back to our customer segment, we're just telling them that the whole we are there out for you. And we will go all the way that will be required, because only if they survive, we survive. Only if we survive, and everything else really happens. So these are the few things we are taking back. And the first thing we are going to do when things really open up is not really going to chase a customer for business or for installment. Is going to tell them that, hey, well, let's kind of we can work it out together. Little bit of a patience, and patience is not equal to being lethargic. I think we'll have to distinguish between both of that.
Hey,
so we'll be quite patient. We'll reach out to them. We'll kind of stand together. And it is not just a theoretical for a webinar kind of saying that we'll all be together. I think there's a tremendous sense in terms of working it out, moving out of the crisis, and probably after 6 months, we look back and say, actually, it looked like an unprecedented, once-in-a-century crisis. Probably it was not. We just hope. While we hope for the best, we'll obviously have to get prepared for the worst. And learning out of all of that is that no firefighter has ever been accused of using lots of water for fighting a fire. So put in a lot more resources so that we survive through meaningfully, come out on the other side of it. We cater to the entire small finance bank, and many of us cater to 5 crore households. There is 15 crore low-income households. You can just look at the opportunity up and then down. It is at least one time more on the higher side and one time more on the lower end of the customer segment. So we are getting prepared, coming back as a team, and hopefully much more stronger than we were before the crisis. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Das.
Thank you, Mr. Babu. Can I request Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industries, the organizer, to mute the participants, please? Because there are sometimes some occasional noises coming. Hello, hello, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Okay. I'll come back to Mr. Babu. Thanks very much for your talk, but I'll come back to Mr. Babu during the Q&A session. with the question that is going through my mind, while the cost of borrowing is being lessened by all the ratios, and possibly that will eventually come down to the NBFCs also, the rate at which they will be lending in the market. Also the provision, the additional money that the RBI is working out for SIDB. While all these things will really make the cost of borrowing a little lesser, but is the ease of borrowing also at the same time going up? Because sometimes we hear the complaints from the various MSMEs scattered around the country who may not be that well informed, that there is too much of difficulty that they get in availing this borrowing. So we will come back to you on that. And also the question that I raised during my introduction of the topic, that are we prepared now even for a write-off? Because in the eventualities of this situation prolonging for a longer duration, and if to the people you are lending the money are failing to return this back, then are we prepared and financially strong enough to really take that hit? With this, I will now go to Mr. Deepnarayan Mitra, a very renowned legal professional, senior partner, Victor Moses and Company, and also the legal committee, or belongs to legal committee of the Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industries. Of course, there are a lot of questions from the various people in terms of the contract renegotiation, contract monetization, the force majeure, the doctrines of frustration, and the various other clauses. So let's hear from Mr. Mitra. What is he seeing now in the market, and what is his views?
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me? Hello.
Yes, we can.
I'm being heard.
Yes, sir, we can.
Thanks to the Bengal Chamber of Commerce for giving us this opportunity to interact, because this is the situation which we never faced in the past, and it's a worldwide situation. This has brought in various questions of law, and it will bring up various other legal questions in time to come. The most glaring question which will come up immediately is about the contracts. Now, the ongoing contracts to be enforced, and the future contracts, all are to be affected by this present situation. This has to be rethought and re-implemented if necessary. The parties to the contract who wants to go out of the contract would try to take help of two sections of the Contract Act, that is Section 32 and Section 56. Section 32 talks about the frustration of a contract, and Section 56 talks about the force majeure conditions. Now, frustration is such a thing that was not contemplated during the contract was entered into. It has intervened in the meantime, whereby the entire contract has been substituted by a new contract. In that situation, only the frustration can be availed of. Otherwise, the frustration cannot be availed of. But this is a very extreme condition when frustration can be achieved or can be availed of. But the other thing is that the force majeure conditions. Now, force majeure conditions is also not implemented. May or may not be written in the contract. But sometimes it is mentioned about force majeure, sometimes it is not. Sometimes the force majeure is defined, sometimes it is not defined. Whatever may be the condition, the Section 56 will operate in the case of force majeure conditions. Now, in force majeure conditions, if it is impossible to perform, if the situation is such that it cannot be performed at all, then only the force majeure condition can be enforced and can be successfully implemented. But otherwise, if the contract is suspended, if for force majeure condition the contract is suspended and there is a provision in the contract for that, then the contract will continue. Contract has to be implemented after the force majeure condition is over. some contracts specify that to implement force majeure, to enforce force majeure condition, we'll have to give notice. Now, notice has to specify what is the force majeure condition and how. Hello. How long?
স্যারকে পাঠায়নি এখনো, আমাকে বলছে এখনো আমি পাইনি, একটু বলো না প্লিজ।
Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industries, please check if we have lost Mr. Mitro. The organizer requesting you to check if we have lost Mr. Mitro. Can someone please check if we have lost Mr. Mitro?
Companies have already lent monies. Lending companies have already lent. Hello. Hello.
Not audible, sir.
Hello, anyone from Bengal Chamber there? Angona, Chandan, anyone from the organizer there?
Yes, sir, we are checking.
Mitra sir, can you speak once? Mitra sir, can you speak once?
Sir, your
He has to
mic
turn his microphone on. Microphone is off. For Mr. Mitro, the microphone is off.
Is it okay?
Sir, can you? Yes, it's okay now, sir. Yes, please
Sir, we can
continue,
hear
sir.
you now.
Okay.
Please continue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Please continue, sir.
Now, in banking sector, there has to be there is devastating. There may be devastating implication about this present lockdown situation. The lenders have lent the money, but the borrower doesn't have the source to pay. The borrower doesn't have the income to pay. Now, what has to be done? There is bound to be disputes between the lender and the borrower, and there has to be some negotiation, some solution between them to go forward with the contracts. Third is the employer-employee situation. Now, so far as the employer-employee situation is concerned, the government of India and the state of West Bengal have issued notifications whereby government has directed that the salary has to be paid, salary or wages have to be paid, and nobody no service can be terminated. Now, the implication of this is very, very far-reaching. The employer doesn't have the income. There is no income of the business. The employees are to be paid by the government directions. There are disputes with regard to this notification, and which is now pending before the Honorable Supreme Court. But that is a separate issue altogether. But in the present situation, this notification under the Disaster Management Act is enforceable, and the employee can jolly well enforce that notification and claim their money, and which is happening. Which is happening in many places. Hello.
Yes, sir, you are audible, sir.
Yes, sir, you are audible,
which is
sir.
happening in many places in the country, because there are disputes between the employer and employee. Next, I touch upon the insolvency. So far as insolvency proceedings are concerned, the government of India has already suspended the proceedings being initiated or being continued for a period of 6 months. That is a temporary relief which has been granted. But these insolvency proceedings are bound to come up in gross. They will be coming up like anything. And the NCLT and NCLAT will be full of these litigations after the lockdown period is over and after this notification is over, period is over. Hello, hello, can I, hello?
Yeah, you are audible. Yes, sir, you are audible, sir.
Did I cover insolvency? Hello?
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. You did. We heard you.
Now, last is the dispute resolution. Now, dispute resolution law, there are several laws about dispute resolution between the two varying parties. Now, these disputes will naturally increase after the lockdown period is over, after this situation is normalizes. That is bound to happen. Litigations will be booming, but problem is that the pendency of the courts during the lockdown period has become such a huge in number. It will be very difficult for the court to deal with all these litigations or fresh litigations. The courts also will have to find out a way and solution so that this pending litigation are disposed of or dealt with as quickly as possible. With that, hello. With that, I thank you all. Hello.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
Mr.
all.
Mitra, you are audible.
I am audible.
Thank you, Mr. Mitra. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
There were some occasional glitches, but we more or less heard you, and good points. We will also come back to you in the Q&A from a question from my side, which is that while we are settling a dispute between the two parties interacting with the business, now one party will win and one will lose. So therefore, there will be a displeased party, there will be a pleased party. Now, the displeased party also will surely be suffering. And as we mentioned, that the stakeholder managing everybody in this crucial time is very critical. So how are we actually therefore balancing the whole thing, like one affected party and one beneficial party in such dispute settlement? So we will come back to you on that. Go to the very important speaker next, Mr. Sanjay Behera, the head of marketing at Tata Steel. It's a large organization handling a huge number of MSMEs. So how are they managing their own business? How are they managing their MSMEs business who are interacting with Mr. Behera? His view from such a large organization in terms of the overall business situation, extremely critical for us. So Mr. Behera, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, sir, and thank you, Bengal Chamber, for giving an opportunity to be a panelist for the discussion on impact of COVID-19. May I share my PPT? So giving a brief background about this Tata Steel. Tata Steel, generates a revenue of close to 10,000 crores from MSME sectors on pan India. We deal close to 10,000 customers spread across all important industrial clusters across the country. So definitely, we are very much concerned about the COVID-19 and how it is going to impact to the MSME sectors. I'll give a small snapshot about this through my presentation. if you see this MSME sector, close to 36 million MSME, they generate employment of 80 million people. So the MSME sector is the second largest employer after agriculture sector in India. They contribute to close to 8% of the GDP. If you see in the export, 49% of the contribution is from MSME. And also this close to, and they are a critical backbone of Indian industry. And even though Government of India is taking a lot of measures to help the MSME, over the next slides, upcoming slides, I'll see what are the sectors that is getting impacted, and how government is also taking some steps to mitigate the loss of MSME. So if you see, there are three types of scenario. If the COVID-19, there is a quick retraction across the globe, including India, by end of May, then as per various experts, the Indian economy may grow at 3.5 to 4.5% of GDP. If in scenario 2, if it exceeds beyond means it continues till H1, then the scene will be different. And in the scenario 3, if the lockdown exceeds for 6 to 7 months like this, and lockdown gets extended, then Indian growth may fall to somewhere around 1.8 to 2.5%, because there will be an impact on global recession. It is not only the domestic industry, but also the major chunk they contributed by MSME, the export business, that will also impacted, because this COVID-19 already impacted Western country, whether it is USA or Europe, any or Southeast Asian nation, which are the major destination of exports for our MSME. And if you see the MSME sector, this you see due to the COVID-19, there is a ban on travel, there is a closure of theaters, education store, and widespread of disruption across the country. And recently, there is a survey of 5,000 MSME by All India Manufacturer Organization that found that 71% of them were not able to pay the worker salary in the month of March, which is actually a disturbing phenomenon, because if you see, since due to lockdown, there is no sense revenue. It is very difficult. They have to maintain the fixed cost and overhead, but it is a challenging time for MSME sectors. And if you see the current and potential impact on this sector, I've taken major things how it is going to impact this MSME sector. One is the price of variation of the key raw materials, and due to extended production shutdown, it has got a extended cascading impact both on the MSME and the primary industry. And since there is no sales, there is a cash flow constraint here, and there is a supply chain disruption both at the MSME from whom they buy, and also where the customer to whom they supply. And due to the migrant labor are going away from the main industrial cluster to their respective native places, so the impact on labor for especially the manufacturing sector is a huge impact on that. And also consumer sentiment, since there is a negative sentiment at the consumer end, so there is a every consumer wants to save money at this time, so they are spending less. In that case, it is also a big factor which will also impact post COVID-19. If you see, 99% of MSME sector enterprises and categorized as micro. It is clear that a large percentage of these 11 crore persons employed in this sector work in these vastly informal enterprises. Most of them have received no wage support for this thing. This is a big impact on the wage impact. And given the state of MSME, employers may well be unable to do so post-lockdown upliftment, because I don't foresee next 2-3 months coming to a normal situation, because it will take some time. And there is a labor impact. If you see the your movement of migrant labor from the industrial cluster, then there is no labor at this moment. Even if they want to kickstart the factory also, there will be hardly 20-30% of the labor in the industry. So it is a very challenging time for us post COVID-19, how to manage that industry, because it is very highly mineral intensive the MSME sector in the country, because in the absence of robotic and automation, and there is a turnover impact. If you see due to lockdown, even post lockdown also, there will be less in sales revenue. So there is a big impact on the turnover. So which has got a big negative impact on the cash flow position, because we know MSME are also not that much financially good, and simultaneously bankers are also tightening the credit terms. That is also a big impact on the turnover. Then coming back to the fixed cost impact, in spite of in this for the last 2 months, even the lockdown is getting extended, without having any production, still they have to bear this fixed costs like commercial space, electricity, water, and other utility bills. This fixed cost, they have to this thing. Then they will need a deferment of tax to pay property tax, rent, and other things in case government takes some steps, which will be great help to the MSME. Then credit impact. MSME are already struggling to access formal credit channels, which will be badly hit for funds. And banks and the NBFC must play a very critical role in this sector, even though government is trying to take a lot of steps, especially for MSME. So that will be also great help to them. Export impact. You see, in India, 49% of exports is contributed by the MSME sectors, primarily in unorganized sectors, whether the garments, machinery tools, or apparels, or leather goods, or very other things. So since most of the these markets, primarily in the Europe, US, or South Asia, or Middle East, they are also affected due to COVID-19. So there is a big impact. As for WTO, this year, this impact on global trade may decline from 13 to 32%. That is a big impact, and definitely the Indian industry will be affected severely. And coming back to unemployment impact, the COVID-19 driven devastation of the workplace will lead to unprecedented unemployment, and that is also definitely government needs to take steps to improve this thing. And maintenance impact, you see machinery and stocks of raw material which will deteriorate, and final products will also be degraded. The MSME will need to undertake outstanding maintenance and service and clear out wasted stocks before they can resume operations at a significant cost, with likely write-off of stocks currently trapped on site. Uncertainty all around impact. COVID-19 will remain around and create a high degree of uncertainty in all aspects of business. In particular, the need to avoid a further spread of COVID-19 in the workplace or through the movement of people and materials may result in further restrictions and a potential return to lockdown. And this is a small the impact of this thing, how the raw material is impacting on the cost and availability, and production lockdown, how it is cascading effect due to the global slowdown, and also cash flow constraint. And there is really a supply chain disruption, because the impact on market, relationship with their customer and downstream enterprises and labor force and consumer sentiment. There is a huge negative sentiment in the consumer. So everybody wants to save this thing at the time. They don't want to spend on any of the whatever bare essential they want to spend. So it has got a big impact on the consumption pattern and exports, which I have already explained. And 1/4 of MSME sector is at verge of closure, can reach up to 43% of lockdown extents. almost 114 million people got affected. Micro enterprises, especially a service sector, are impacted most. Post hit includes hotel industry, tourism, logistics, although essential services are operational. Consumer goods, garments, footwear, utensils, and automotive sector will show direct impact. Import and export business are at stake. And some of the mitigation, you see, RBI has allowed moratorium on term loans for 3 months, and some of the public sector, they have also introduced emergency credit lines whereby a maximum loan up to 200 crores or 10% of the existing fund-based working capital can be provided. The Small Industry Development Bank of India (SIDBI) has also got a approval to provide loans at 5% to COVID-19 impacted the MSME sectors. And Honorable Minister Mr. Nitin Gadkari is planning to push a new proposal under the Distress Asset Fund and Fund of Funds for 20,000 crore, which may be a great help to the MSME sectors. And some of the key recommendations to see, which we even though a lot of things are going on, various industry associations are proposing to the ministry. We request the Bengal Chamber of Commerce to put these recommendation to the ministry for extending support in this challenging time to our MSME sectors. One is extend advance tax deposit rate. All GST and other tax refunds should be credited immediately. Exemption of MSME accounts from NPA classification to be extended till June, and banks may be credited to provide funds. And trade receivable discounting system should be made effective, and all pending payments should be clear within 15 days. Inspection and physical audits should not be there with fines. A wage support or subsidy package would enable employers to pay salaries and other statutory dues to daily wage workers. Compensate self-employed business who can provide a decrease in turnover. Taking care of fixed costs like minimum electricity charges paid by MSME during the lockdown period, extension of the credit period so that they can tide over the situation. And some of the other thing also, SIDBI could play a key role in incentivizing banks to lend to MSME. Innovative Mudra scheme, increasing open cash credit account by 20% for MSME and can be reviewed monthly. Salary or wage compensation. Constitution of a task force. The Economic Survey of 1990-20 highlighted the need for PSB to embrace fintech lenders and collaborate with digital finance and lending platforms. This is a small snapshot how it is going to impact. If you see, 64% of the consumer, they are going to spend less on basically restaurant, movie, and theater. This is going to impact. And also 54% plan to decrease their spends on automobile, luxury brands, and leisure travel. 43% defer spending on more on apparel, personal grooming, and home decor. 42% to spend less on alcohol and tobacco. These things. However, there might be some positive impact to some of the segments like personal and hygiene, this thing, and also healthcare sector, as well as various mobile app and OTP, because a lot of people they will be spending more time in home, and there may be various social distancing norm in the factory spaces which government is coming out with guidelines. Some have been implemented in some of the states also. There will be a challenging time for MSME because they need to put extra effort because they in implementing those norms post COVID-19. And that's all from my side. In case any question is there, I will be glad to associate myself. I'm replying the questions. And over to Mr. Basu.
Thank you, Mr. Behera. There are some questions, quite a lot from the audience, but in the want of time, I will have to restrict myself to 1 or 2 questions only for every speaker. Now, of course, there are many questions for Mr. Mitro on the legal side. One question that I feel is good and pertinent for all is, does the salary deferment? May I request all to put their microphones on mute, please? The salary deferment, does it have any legal implications for an employer? Like a furlough or salary deferment, does it have a legal implication for an employer? And just another question, Mr. Mitro, for you is that can a force majeure by a supplier can be sent over email to the purchaser? Will that be considered as legally valid? And if a purchaser terminates an agreement, can the supplier still get some damages, some cost for the damages? Mr. Mitra?
I answer the first question first. The Government of India has issued the notification under the Disaster Management Act, which supersedes all law for the time being in force. Therefore, that notification has to be obeyed, has to be complied with by the employers. It's an obligation now of the employers to pay, and they cannot deduct any wages from any of their employees. This is a mandatory deduction, has to be complied with unless this is set aside by the court. Now, so far as the force majeure is concerned, sending notice by email is sufficient. It says notice, that notice has to be by any form. That will do. And the third question is that whether the supplier can get some damages. If the termination of the contract is in violation of the force majeure clause, then certainly the damages is the legal remedy. But if the termination if the contract says that by reason of force majeure condition, there is an option given to the supplier to the buyer to terminate the contract, then the contract is terminable, and the damage, whatever is legally entitlement, that can be realized. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Mitra. Mr. Mitra, that one question which I had, if you can also quickly address now, that in terms of any dispute between the two parties, when one will be definitely winning, so therefore there will be a displeased party, there will be a pleased party. Now, in a stakeholder kind of a situation, and where everyone is actually struggling for the financials and for floating, will that also create a little bit of a chaos, because it's a zero-sum game finally? So what is your reaction to that?
That the other party has to raise the dispute. Other party has to raise the dispute, and dispute has to be decided whatever is the contract terms. If the contract terms, the adjudicator or the arbitrator decides the disputes in favor of the other party, then he will certainly certainly expect some compensation.
Sure.
The loss is sustained.
Okay. Sure. Going back to Mr. Babu, Mr. Babu, one question which possibly you may be the right person here in the forum to answer this. Saying that we all know the bad economic situation that everybody is going through, the whole world, the country, the business, and everyone. But in this situation, what is the option for a middle-class young generation to start a new business or opportunity? Is there any option for them to get over this situation? Any suggestions in terms of financing or any other suggestions for them? Mr. Bhaskar Babu? No, we can't hear Mr. Babu. Possibly I don't know if he's still there.
So I'm there. Can you hear me?
Oh, you were there? I can. Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Please, I can hear you now. Yeah. Could you hear my question?
Yeah, sir, can you just quickly repeat it? I could hear part of that.
The question is that we have the question is that everybody now knows about the bad situation, the distressing times of the world, country, everybody, business, and everyone. So, is there a message of hope for a young middle-class entrepreneur to start a business now? Is there a message of hope for him or her?
If I have to kind of lean on our own experience, yes, but every time there is an opportunity. But while we kind of talked about, even Mr. Behera was talking about MSME and the fund crunch and all of that. In spite of all that, if you look at even the NPA, including quote-unquote mismanaged, so to say, it's 15% of the overall thing. But the business failure of any startups, usually, including even in developed countries, is substantially higher. Is it the right time? Yes, I think there is no right time or a wrong time at all. In a country like ours, where there's a long-term linear growth will be closer to around 6 to 7%, it is the right time. We as an entity started 11 years back in the meltdown of 2008-9. It gave us some valuable experiences in terms of what to do right, even when the going is good. So to the extent, I would think that there is lots of hope. People, if they want to start, I don't think it's not a couple of months we should push you back. You should get going.
Yeah, and one more related question here also is that while the cost of borrowing possibly is coming down because all these concerted efforts now, is the ease of borrowing also there? I mean, is it still, will it continue to be very complicated, or there will be ease of borrowing? And also, do you think that this NPA will go up, and is our banking system prepared to take that adverse hit? Because if this prolongs, then the NPA will go up, and will we be able to take that hit?
So quite a bit of money is there to chase the MSME. As Mr. Majeure was also mentioning, fintechs, the small finance banks, the new age ones are all ready. I think what we as a country will have to really learn, or will have to develop, that is in terms of money borrowed is to be returned. So the moment that kind of culturally we come in, we can all go through difficult times, but the intent has to be very strong. The moral lineage should be very strong, that anything I borrow, I should be responsible that I borrow and put it to productive use, and I will be trying my best to return at every point of time. That's something which as an entire country we should really learn, probably because of various reasons that money borrowed from the bank was supposed to be free money. It started with probably the loan melas of the world of 1970s. That's something we'll have to go through, but there is enough of banks, enough of money which is kind of out there waiting to tap into. But what is really critical for MSME, while we easily kind of pointed out towards a fund crunch, more important in my personal view is that lots of risk management has to be taught to MSMEs. They many times depend on a single borrower, so being single buyer. Many times they rely on a single supplier, and kind of they take in more risk than they really even think they do it. So a combination of this is what really required for creating a strong ecosystem, MSE ecosystem.
Thank you. Going to Mr. Vinit Kumar. Mr. Vinit Kumar, as I was giving an indication of the question, let me take the opportunity now to ask you that. I mean, do you see, which you mentioned, you made a very good point that maybe the Eastern region could play a very big role in now becoming one anchor player for the Southeast Asia business. But for overall India, also for Bengal, do you really see an opportunity now that we will be now going more to different countries? Our products will be to more countries now because of there could be a vacuum getting created in the whole world. And do you also think that our import will be now lesser? Our inbound goods will be much lesser than our outbound goods?
See, I don't see in the short term there is any change. If you ask for Calcutta, the ratio is around 50%. It was more around 2 years ago, it was 60-40, import 60, exports 40, because this is basically, this area is more of a consumer market. Not in the short term, but long term or medium term, if you see, the government is coming up with, with the policy, and also we are planning to make a package which is attractive for people to come in and invest in and around the ports. Our focus is in and around the ports, but the broader focus of the government is definitely to bring them to the country. I hope once this kind of investment comes, and with the lead time of maybe 2 to 3 years, we shall be in a position to have more exports and more exports from here. And it also depends as to what kind of industry we bring in. It might sustain a lot of the local demand, so there can be some import substitution also. So in my view, as of now, immediately nothing, there's not going to be a big change. But yes, with the right kind of effort and right policy and proper coordination, we have an opportunity there to take advantage of this situation and get some major industries in this region.
Thank you. Thank you. Just a related question here, very quickly, a quick answer from you. With now, suppose the export from India is increasing significantly and more MSMEs are coming into this. Will there be anything, either financial or technical or training or awareness, anything that will be extended from the shipping lines, from the shippers, from people associated in the logistics industry, which will enable them to be more active in this area? Because sometimes they have a lot of unawareness of how to do these things. So will there be any financial benefit or any awareness related benefit be extended to them?
As I told you, we are working out a package. We are working out a package as to how to promote this industry, how to promote industrialization in the port areas. From our side, I can say, we can. Port Trust has a lot of land at its with us, so maybe we can, we are thinking of incentivizing in some manner on the rent side and the other conditions. There may be much better conditions for them to come. Training and other enabling things that we have, I think, at adequate capacity. Calcutta also had adequate capacity. We have Indian Maritime University and everything is there. So I think that capacity constraint as of now is not there. And there's adequate capacity in the private sector also. So, we can ramp, that should not be a problem.
Thank you. Thanks. So I think more and more questions coming in, but we do not have time to take more than one question. So the last question I will pick up is from Mr. Behera. The question for you is, what is the likely impact on steel downstream products like GC sheets or TMT? What's your view on that?
Yeah, very good questions. Actually, if you see most of the downstream products, actually somewhere the other backed up by the fund released by the government, either through stimulus package or this thing, whether it is to construction or any building infrastructure like that. Due to COVID-19, we are expecting government will divert more fund for health related, whether building hospital, ventilator, or increasing the capacity of hospital beds and other things, and also various sanitization initiatives. In that case, the investment on this stimulus package may be reduced, which we are expecting this financial year, which may have a negative impact on this thing. And as per our internal estimation, the steel industry demand may shrink by 17 to 20% in this financial year. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your answer. I think there were a lot of questions, but we will try to reach out to you separately, maybe from Bengal Chamber of Commerce. We'll do that and get your answers to the questions which we could not pick up.
Yeah.
And I must thank you all for a wonderful session. And summing up, it seems that all the enablers around the business are really helping and contributing a lot by their thoughts, incentives, facilities, various things to the businesses. But be very careful. But finally, the buyer sentiment will definitely play a very big role. When will they actually enjoy coming out to the market and really buying as they have been buying in the past? Because the demand has to be really created. For the good days again, and I end again by thanking all of you and for all the audience for wishing them to stay very, very safe and healthy during these trying times. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Today's session here. Thank you everybody for joining.
Thank you.